watching us. We have the honor of showing him what we can do. Swords out!
Joachim Murat was born in Labstide Fortunier in southern France on March 25th, 1767. He was the son of a yeoman, innkeeper, and postmaster. The young Murat's parents seeked him a career in the church, so from a young age the boy was given over to the local church, who began to tutor the boy in the way of the church and theology. He was then taken in to a seminary in Toulouse when he was 10 in order to start an official church career and prepare to take the cloth. But that career path would end in 1787. While doing his studies, a regiment of cavalry passed through the city. For the boy this was different. It seemed far more dignified and honorable, so he made a shift. He ran away from the seminary and joined the Chasseurs d'Ardenne, which would become known as the 12th Chasseurs. Far from the cavalry he wanted to join, but it gave him experience. The experience would only last 2 years, however, as due to an affair Murat would get into, he would be forced to resign from the army in 1789, returning home to be a clerk in a haberdashery. But much like other young men, that year a lot would change with the French Revolution, and with the creation of the new National Convention, a new military department was created. The Garde Nationale, or the National Guard, was created following the fall of the Bastille, and Murat would join the ranks of the National Guard in 1790. He would rejoin the 12th Chasseurs later that year, where he would participate in the escape of Louis XVI during the flight to Varney. He would assist in the recapture and return of the royal family to Paris. He would play the revolutionary politics, moving position to position, post to post, until finally being stationed in Paris in 1795, where he would be serving as a cavalry officer. This was the year of the 13th of Vendémiaire. The National Assembly was meeting to amend and create a new French Republic government that would correct the wrongs of the revolution. However, 30,000 royalists planned to descend on the convention and seize the government in order to restore the Bourbons to the throne of France. Paul Barras was charged with the protection of the convention and had ordered a young artillery general to command the National Guard troops to protect the convention and put down the royalist uprising. This young general's name was Napoleon Bonaparte, and Murat volunteered to recover missing artillery that the National Guard had abandoned on their march to Paris. Murat was able to sneak the artillery through the 30,000 insurrectionists and help put down the rising with, as the famous quote says, a whiff of grape shot. Napoleon would keep Murat by his side when he was appointed commander of the Army of Italy, following the 13th of Vendémiaire. He brought Murat as his aide-de-camp. Though Napoleon would make him lead his cavalry throughout the Italian campaign, all the way to defeating the Austrians and ending the War of the First Coalition. In 1798, Murat would be assigned to be a cavalry commander under Thomas Dumas in Napoleon's Army of the Orient. He would gain glory breaking the Ottoman forces at the Battle of Aboukir, but when he and Napoleon saw the defeat of their army coming, he joined the general in returning back to France. Murat would hold a much more pivotal role than most of the 18th of Brumaire coup d'etat, following the attack on Napoleon Bonaparte in the chamber. Murat on horseback stormed into the chamber with a platoon of grenadiers and hussars, placing them under arrest and dissolving the chamber, then later intimidating the other chamber into voting through the consulship. Next move in Murat's growing career was his marriage to Caroline Bonaparte, Napoleon's sister, in a civil ceremony in 1800, then again in 1802 in a religious ceremony, making him Napoleon's brother-in-law. In 1804, Murat would be declared one of the first 18 men granted the titles of Marshal of France, the day after the declaration of the Empire. But Murat was also granted another title as Napoleon's longest supporter and lieutenant. Napoleon granted him the title of the First Horseman of Europe. Much like other marshals, Murat would serve under Napoleon in the Grand Armée. But unlike his colleagues, he didn't command infantry corps, but a grand cavalry corps. He would serve throughout the 1804 to 1807 campaigns as Napoleon's chief cavalry commander, but he would show his most impressive feat at the Battle of Eloi. The Battle of Eloi occurred when, by complete mistake, the French vanguard crashed into Russian General Bennigsen, who was attempting to reorganize all Russian troops. For 2 days, the two armies clashed. Napoleon kept dumping more men into the slaughter, fearful that if the Russians were able to organize enough, they would push him out of his recently conquered territorial gains in Poland. So while waiting for Marshal Ney to arrive with reinforcements, he turned to Murat. He looked at the cavalryman, then stated, "What are you going to do about this?" With a smile, the cavalryman rode to the head of his corps, declaring the emperor had requested his cavalry personally, then led one of the largest cavalry charges on the European continent. 11,000 men on horseback smashed into the Russian army. Quickly it was discovered following this that Major General Lestac of the Prussian army arrived with 9,000 men. But as if sent from above, Ney's corps arrived, and the battle would end with a French victory on February 8th, 1807. Following the Treaty of Tilsit, Murat would be granted the title of Grand Duke of Berg after the establishment of the Duchy of Berg. He would hold this title until 1808. What changed in 1808? In short, was caused by Murat, as a commanding general in the Iberian Peninsula. Napoleon had created what became known as the Continental System, and its purpose was to deprive Great Britain of trade with Europe, but Portugal refused to stand by this and continued the trade. Napoleon feared if they were willing to bring in trade goods, it would not be too far-fetched that they would bring in British military, and with the British army on the Pyrenees, it could threaten France. So Napoleon moved troops into Spain to serve as a, so to speak, deterrent for another war. However, the Spanish citizenry did not appreciate what in short became an occupation army being stationed in their country. Murat would discover camps of murdered French soldiers and retaliate by attacking local villages and burning them down and killing many. Napoleon would remove the Spanish king upon hearing this report and divert more troops into Spain to keep the peace. He would also install his brother Joseph as the new king of Spain, to be sure he kept a loyal man on the throne. But Joseph's previous kingdom of Naples and Sicily now needed a monarch, and he decided to place Murat, his brother-in-law, on the throne of Naples and Sicily in 1808. Murat would return to take command of his new kingdom, while Napoleon and Jean Lannes dealt with Spain and secured the new Bonaparte monarchy's control. However, politics began to creep their way into Napoleon and Murat's relationship. A strange alliance between Foreign Minister Talleyrand and Police Minister Fouché was interested that if Napoleon was lost in Spain, instead of putting one of Napoleon's siblings or relatives on the throne of the empire, they would find a controllable individual. And they found that person in Murat, who was a good soldier and was beloved as a war hero by the people of France. Napoleon, of course, would not falter in Spain and would return and destroy the conspiracy, and this would cause distrust between Napoleon and his Marshal and King of Naples. Murat would keep his head down until Napoleon decided to invade Russia in 1812, for similar reasons to that of the war in Spain. Napoleon needed all of his best commanders, and he offered Murat command of the cavalry again, which he would serve well at many battles on the way to Moscow. Specifically at the battles of Borodino and Smolensk, where the use of heavy cavalry would break Russian formations and give both victories to the French. He would enter Moscow with Napoleon and witness firsthand the Russians' burning of their own holy capital, which would deprive the French army of any supplies or shelter for the oncoming winter. Murat, with other marshals, attempted to convince Napoleon to start making the retreat to Europe, but Napoleon was insistent that Tsar Alexander would negotiate for peace. The negotiations would never come, and the retreat would begin as snow began to fall. Murat's cavalry corps would be lost to the winter, during the retreat. He would continue to serve Napoleon into the War of the Sixth Coalition, but Murat was not of the flamboyant fool everyone thought he was, and he was seeing the writing on the wall. After the Battle of Nations at Leipzig, he reached out to the coalition of nations, who one of the nations was commanded by one of his former comrades, Jean Bernadotte. With promises that he could keep his throne, Murat agreed to defect to the coalition side and abandon Napoleon as long as he and his family were left alone in power in Naples. He would not be president at Fontainebleau for the fall of the empire, and he and his wife Caroline would be the only members of the Bonaparte family not forced into exile. But ambition plagued the king, and he would, in March of 1815, make the Rimini Proclamation, which called for the uprising across Italy to remove the Austrians from the Italian peninsula and hopefully create a new Italian state that Murat, hopefully, would become king of. This dream would fail spectacularly, Murat starting the war in mid-March and it ending in an Austrian victory in late May, just a little over 2 months. Murat would escape to Corsica and return to France, where he would hope the recently returned from exile Napoleon would give him assistance. However, the opposite would happen. Napoleon, in fact, refused to even see Murat and had him turned away. He would attempt to retake his throne with a small expedition to Pizzo, but instead he would be captured by the troops of the new King of Naples, Ferdinand IV. In the fall of 1815, he was found guilty of treason against Naples, and the king picked only men who served Murat to be members of his firing squad. Murat planned to die with the same flamboyance he had always had, and he had a bath, wore cologne, and dressed in his finest uniform, and marched out to the field with the soldiers. With no blindfold, he looked at his men who were in tears, and he declared, "Friends, if you wish to spare me, please aim for my heart." They took their positions, aimed, and fired, killing Murat instantly on October 13th, 1815. He'd be one of 2 marshals executed in 1815, along with Michel Ney. He would be one of 3 to die unnaturally in 1815, counting Marshal Joachim Murat. Murat was definitely a character of his time. He was born from nothing, like many other marshals, and he was able to play his personal life into the political game and rose to be a king. But it would be under that same political game that he would lose all he had, especially with the fall of his brother-in-law, and he would end his life shot by the very same men he led. He is today buried in Père Lachaise Cemetery, where many of his comrades rest with him, and he will always be remembered as the First Horseman of Europe. Thanks for joining us today. I will not lie, this was a marshal I had difficulty with. Unlike the past 2, Ney and Lannes, Murat was a very self-ambitioned and only cared what Napoleon could give him, and not so much for France or really even Naples. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are returning and not yet subscribed, or it's your first time watching, please subscribe and join our growing community. If you enjoyed as well, please like, share, and comment, and we will see you in the next one.